like a burn. But she rubbed this across my hand, and when I say that my hand didn't even stay red, it didn't even stay red. It didn't hurt. I didn't have to use a bandage. A few minutes later, it was as if it didn't happen. And it's just really interesting that you mentioned how, your body can absorb it, because I think, not only from a healing perspective, but I think that it must have been able to just absorb, immediately into my system and just calm the entire situation down, because I remember, those first few seconds prior to them rubbing the rescue remedy on my hand, it was hot. And that wouldn't have been something that would have been taken down to a 2 or a 0, in just a matter of, 20 seconds without some sort of, serious assistance. So that was really interesting that you said that.
Absolutely. And I'm telling you, the piece around that I think is really beautiful and profound is that along with that comes also intention. The fact that she was like, okay, I got something for you. Can I assist you with this? And it's a little bit different in my experience, and I will speak of my experience. It's a little bit different than saying, here, I have an aspirin. Here, I have, some Tylenol. And it's not to say anything about those things, but it's just to say that I have something. And the fact of the intention of rubbing it on your hand, et cetera, all of these things play into how helpful it can all be as well. And so to answer the caller's question, it can be effective as soon as immediately, depending on what is going on as far as the subtle energy of the person that is being treated, and are they open, to utilizing the remedy. That will play into it as well, and so they will be able to use it ongoingly until they feel balance and peace around whatever it is that's going on. So say, for instance, one of the things that I'm going to talk about before we're all done is the offer that I have for people. And one of the Bach tales that I've created, kind of like my own little mix of Bach Flower essences that can be utilized, is it brings into the focus some of the different areas that come up around heartache. And around, loss of love and transitioning of relationships into different relationships, and how we can support that, with the flower essences, and how we can support that balance and that learning and that understanding, And so the time, like if I started taking it because I was experiencing these symptoms from heartache, then when I became healing within myself, balance, and I felt, okay, and having an understanding of, or even an understanding in this instance of what my role is in this, how this is going to help me, what I am to learn from this, then I would say, okay, I'm feeling balanced. Maybe I can just shift to, just my regular water now, my alkaline waters and just my other things, because I'm feeling pretty good, and it can go that kind of way. And if I have some left, then I can keep it, because if I become, even before I become symptomatic, if I start to notice that I'm drifting off of my little ocean, my little island of balance, I'll be like, okay, let me feel into this. What does this feel like this related to? This is back again, to this feeling of whatever it is that may have had to do with the heartache. Maybe I'm starting to spiral into some different kind of thoughts and upset about, how I feel unempowered, or just whatever the case. Then again, I could come back in with it, okay, and then, do my other complementary practices and bring myself back into my balance space. So I hope that is helpful for the caller. There are, ways that they can find out a little bit more information after the call as well. So I hope that is helpful.
Okay. So let's talk a bit about assessment. And you did already share, which was going to be one of my initial questions, which was, what would be the most popular or the one remedy that you would say would be the best for everyone to have. You already answered that. But let's talk a bit about assessment. Again, because they're so specific, how would you recommend someone actually finding out more information on which would be the best outside of rescue remedy for them to sort of, how would they start the relationship with the Bach Flower Remedies? Like which one, how would they figure out which would be the best for them? Is it just testing, or, you know, should they contact a practitioner? What would you think would be the best way to go about it?
I am going to tell you, Janice, what I really, really encourage people to do is to go to the store, go to or their health outlet where they know that they can find the Bach Flower Essences in Chicago, here in Hyde Park. That would be the place. My go-to place is over here at Bonasante. Go over to your local health food store and go to the area where they have the Bach Flower Essences. They invariably will have pamphlets. They will also have books and sometimes booklets and sometimes even books that are right there next to the flower essences. And feel into the reason why you went there. What is it that is encouraging you or discouraging you in the world to the point where you feel that you really want to have some additional support? You know, are you attempting to create something? Are you, experiencing these kinds of issues maybe within a relationship or within, a work environment? Or are you, dealing with some deep-seated family issues? Whatever it is, start to look at the 7 basic ones, because it'll be like, okay, do I feel afraid? Do I feel uncertain? Do I feel, am I lonely, or what's going on? Go there and hang out with them, because if you think about the way that they were created, that's the way that you can move into them also. The way that they were created, again, if people are just joining in a call, he went into the field and sat down and found a way to communicate intuitively to figure out which imbalances could be addressed by which of these flowers. And it was a symbiotic conversation, from the way that the story goes. And so allow that to occur, in the middle of your Bonasante health food store, everybody's doing and going here. That is a beginning process right there to start the work. Right? I know that. I mean, it's a good place to start. And you can step back from that if you are feeling that, okay, maybe, I'm not quite ready for that. I am ready to get some outside support, and I'm not quite ready to do that. I do have a mini session that I can do with people. It's something very simple. They could set up either by calling me or messaging me, and they could do a mini session with me, and I will use the conversation and a couple of different assessments that I have developed myself to help get to the core of just where they are around this one issue. And it's very, it's very connective. I will share with them a lot of information, both in written format and also just, in connecting and talking back and forth. And then I will suggest to them, you may want to try this and this and this from the Bach Flower Essences. And then also, if there are other alternative therapies that I think would be helpful, I could, show them in that direction as well. But it's just a mini session, and it's something that I'll be offering for a very limited time. It's something that they could sign up for. And for this time frame, it's a 30-minute session. They can get it for $20. That's a wild.
Wow. Can I get one? I want one. No, one of the things I wanted to note about the Bonasante or local, 2 things that you mentioned. Local health food store, that's one. And I'm, Houston, Chicago, New York, it doesn't matter. I go to a lot of the big box, the main stores also, but do support your local health food stores. That's my little plug about that. That we need them. And outside of that, I wanted to say that I've had my moment also. Actually, I wanted to share a little bit about how I went about it, deciding which would be the best for me. And actually, I do the same with a lot of my studies. It's really, I'll educate myself based on intuition. So Bach Flower Remedies, I mean, it wasn't like I was up all night on the internet looking for, flower essences. I believe just one of my friends, I'm sure probably maybe my neighbor, I would say it probably was either neighbor or Moot that mentioned it first, and then I actually, Moot had, it's so funny, she had a couple at her house, and she said I could have one. And so here was this box or something full of these essences, and she didn't tell me which one. She didn't make a recommendation, and I wasn't that familiar. But I was like, okay, well, it's one. I could work that out. So I just kind of stared at this box of essences and pulled them out one by one. And I believe sometimes we underestimate the power of silence and listening to oneself. Although I chat quite a bit and I'm out and about, I do believe in silence, and I do believe in listening, in a lot, definitely, to yourself. Because I remember just sitting there and I was like, well, I'm not going to get on the, me being a Leo and me just being me, I had to almost fight the temptation to just get on the internet and look up everything, right, that was in the box and, try to analyze, every single one and try to almost write my own prescription. But just sitting there and reading each one, I mean, I picked out, one that I thought, all right, well, we'll see how this goes. It could work. I called her 2 days later. I was like, oh, my gosh, I cannot believe that this actually works, And from there, it just became more about feeling out, again, like you mentioned, why are we there? Why are you seeking, this connection? And I have to be honest, I haven't bought any yet. I literally, I have many. I have violet, I have elm and holly and gorse and all kinds of stuff. But the interesting thing is that they just keep coming into my space. I'll read about them, and then my neighbor will end up with an extra box. Who ends up with an extra box of Bach Flower Remedies, and they knock on the door, ask their neighbor, and say, hey, do you want some? I mean, who does that, Well, my neighbor. So so it's interesting, it's interesting how you can not only educate yourself and connect, but you can start to attract these things also, So, yeah, I mean, being intuitive education has definitely been part of my journey, and I think that's what's also made me the most receptive. I don't know hardly everything about it, but what I do know has worked pretty well.
Oh, absolutely. I'm so glad that you said that, Janice, because part of my journey did not mention, if anybody is a part of the, alternative medicine, esoteric community, whatever we would want to call it, they may remember a beautiful bookstore called Transition. And for some time, I used to do a workshop over at Transition. And from these workshops, I used to get coaching clients. And so one of the bits of information or wisdom that I would share with my clients is that our intuition is flawless. It is up to us to connect with it to the point where we can listen without judgment and without fear so that we can move on knowing that all is truly well, and
Absolutely.
listen to intuition, because it's the more that we listen to it, the more that it becomes a part of our conversation, and the more that it becomes a part of, how we move ourselves in the world. And when I was doing the research on the Bach Flower essences, I love how he basically says, and this again lends to how the essences are used. Basically, he says that behind all disease, bar none, behind all disease, lie our fears, our anxieties, our worries, our faults, and our perceived failings. And it is these specific subtle energies that once we balance them, we clear the way for our own health and wellness. We do the work, and we are supported by these different alternative therapies, and in this instance, the flower essences, to support us in doing this great